Hi, everyone, and welcome to our Facebook Not So Live event. I'm Dave Gold. I'm here today with my team members, Rennie and Stacy. Am I getting a feedback here too? Are you guys
I'm
hearing this?
getting some feedback. Maybe Vinny and Stacy, if you're not speaking, maybe if you put yourself on mute, that could sometimes help.
Let's do that. Let's mute out. If that doesn't work, I'll go inside and see if that helps. All right, that sounds better. All right, here we go again. Okay, so anyway, I'm Dave Gold. I'm one of the founders here, and I am with my team members, Rennie and Stacy, for our Facebook Live event, which is not live because Facebook is not allowing us in live. So if you're watching this, it's because we recorded it, posted it, and pretend we're live because we're all alive. And we're here today with Kendra Neipp, who once again came to us via Stacy's incredible network of incredible people. And I will turn it over to Stacy first to introduce Kendra, tell you a little bit about who she is, what she does, and why she is who she is. But I just want to say that in the 10 minutes that we had before we went in, Kendra, I have just gotten such a respect and appreciation for who you are. And I'm really, really glad that you're part of what's happening here today and look forward to having you on the Commonwealth tomorrow. So Stacy, tell us who this very impressive person is and how you know her.
Thanks, Dave. Hey, so welcome, you guys. We're so glad you're here, and I'm so glad to introduce you to Kendra. She is someone who I have consistently been impressed with since the moment we met. Kendra is someone who I've seen do the hard work of family, work-life balance. Kendra is someone who wants to serve her clients well, who wants to be professional, who wants to show up for people, and also realizes like we have all these other things that we juggle. And so she has gone and found resources for how to be a successful entrepreneur. I just remember, so I run an after-school program and a preschool, and so Kendra's daughter Zoe was someone who I got to spend so much time with, and we love Zoe. We love this kid, which is also a testament to Kendra's amazing spirit. But Kendra would be like, I'm going to this meeting and I'm going to learn this and that, and I'm doing this networking thing, and she just worked herself into this amazing business, and then was at the farmers market, setting up calls to do life coaching and business coaching for people. And the cool thing is, she's really found her stride and is so successful at supporting people in career coaching. You'll get to hear about that, but especially women who are entering the workforce or re-entering the workforce, transitions. That's a big thing that Kendra has done. Used to do market research and strategy consulting, and then took these leaps of faith and moved to different places in the world, started a farm, started a family, and then is doing what she's doing now so successfully, and with a lot of focus. So fully inspired by this amazing woman, and so excited to download some of her info and share it with you guys today. So welcome, Kendra, and thank you for being here, and thank you for all of our Facebook friends for tuning in.
And Stacey, I just want to thank you for such a gracious introduction. Really, really beautiful. So I have a quick question. When I saw you work in the Hillsborough Farmer Market, and I was so impressed with how you sold, were you peddling her wares, or were you doing something else?
So I worked for a small startup of women who were selling this really cool spread called Sama Spread. And then Kendra was there, starting kind of initially, right, Kendra, you were kind of in the beginning stages of that first year of doing consulting and doing life coaching, business coaching, and things like that. So it was fun to see her there.
Okay. Yeah. I wonder what the connection might be. So Kendra, thank you. And I've discovered that I'm so excited to get into people's stories and their wisdom that I generally jump over what do they do? So just so we could frame what this is part of my training here. So Kendra, we know you're amazing. You do a lot of things. Tell us what you do.
What do I do? That is such a good question. Always a good place to start. Yes, so I am a career coach, and I focus a lot on interview coaching. And I work particularly, most of my clients are women. And I do that just on purpose because that's who I connect easily with. And I also provide coaching for people who are in transition. So that looks a lot of different ways for a lot of different people. So that might mean giving up a career that you've known and maybe not loved and looking for something else. That might be, I have a client now who had a full-time job but is starting an entrepreneur venture and cut back down to half time at that gig and is growing the business. It might mean, even just being within a company and wanting to transition and get to that next promotion, but not knowing how or how to communicate well with the boss. So wide range of topics, but typically focused on, starting with a career goal. But as Stacy was mentioning, and that I don't believe that our careers are ever isolated from the rest of our lives. And so I love being able to incorporate other things into those conversations, even though I call myself a career coach.
So I first I thought it was just coincidence, but it seems that so many of the guests that we've had on and Facebook and our Commonwealth and people that we're working with and coaching with are either shepherding people through transitions and or going through transitions themselves.
Mm-hmm.
So I think you're probably well suited for this. And you shared a little bit of your story. Well, first of all, let me just state that when you are talking about, and if I could use the phrase shepherding people through transitions, you're talking from it, not about it.
Yeah, sure.
Okay. So tell us a little bit of your journey and how, and then I guess from there we'll go into how that has equipped and empowered you to help others do the same.
Yeah, definitely. So my journey, my background, I have a degree in business. And when I graduated from there, I joined a small startup company, which was a market research firm. And it was interesting. It was intriguing to me. They studied things that I find fascinating, how people's minds can be changed through advertising and whether a Facebook ad or a TV ad works better or more cost efficiently, things like that. So that was interesting. But as I quickly got into it, I realized, okay, when I'm doing a good job at my job, I'm helping soft drinkers drink more soda. I'm helping box stores sell more products. I'm helping, somebody buy a fancier phone or fancier car. And none of that in and of itself, was malicious, but it wasn't very aligned with some of my personal values. And so I always thought, okay, I'll gain what I can from here and then move on to a company that I care more about. But then life kind of happened, and at each stage it made sense to say, oh, I'll just stay. My salary is getting better. My flexibility is getting better. I started out in California, worked remotely from there. My husband and I spent 4 years in Hawaii, and then we moved to North Carolina, and we started a farm out here. And so at each stage, it seemed like, I would tell myself these stories about like, I can't possibly make this much money somewhere else. Or even though I started, dreading going to work each morning, I would switch roles within the company. And, I got to, the best place I could be at the company. But, at the heart of it, I was just, I have a lot of grit and I can stick to it and stick through it. So it took actually getting laid off for me to leave there and to kind of feel once I felt, I think talking about transition is interesting. One of my best friends at the time was a psychologist, and she said, you're going to go through all the emotions of grief when losing a job. It's like losing a person. And that just resonated with me in a really interesting way, because it was like, oh, wow, I can let myself feel angry about this, but I can also let myself feel the relief. And that was a big deal to kind of navigate that transition. So I think that sort of helped me. And then from there, I decided okay, this might be the time when I just take an easy job. And my husband and I were looking at starting a family at the time. And so I thought, okay, I'm just going to grow some flowers on the side and work for a little local co-op and kind of just, have kids. And, then I'll figure out, once I have kids, I'll figure out what else is after that. And it turned out that our journey for having kids took a lot longer. So as that time started panning on, I was like, okay, I need to figure out, I know I'm not going to go back into market research, but what is this next thing going to be? And I think the steps in that transition, I don't usually believe that like most of the time, it's not like a big lightning bolt that strikes you like, you're passionate about this. This is going to be your perfect job. I have a crystal ball. This is the most amazing thing. For me, it was sort of a stepwise journey into coaching. It was that I had a coffee date with a friend who mentioned that coaching was even a thing. I didn't have friends who had been coached, didn't have family who had been coached. And so that was kind of, oh, that's intriguing. So then I, went online and did an informational interview with somebody who is a coach and talked with her and realized, wow, there's a lot about this that resonates. And she said, why don't you go to a meetup group and see if you feel like coaches are your people? Like, are these your tribe? Do you like being around these people? And so I thought, oh, that's a great idea. So I did. And sure enough, they're talking about things I was really interested in, personality types, and even down to, how do you organize your business? I loved all of the topics that were coming up in this meetup. And so I decided to go take a course, and I got my certificate in life coaching. And then I started my business, and thankfully did have a daughter, along the way as well. Oh, I think you're still muted, Dave.
Here we go. Am I back? There were construction vehicles outside, so I had to take quieter quarters here. So you've been in constant transition in a way. So one is, let me ask you a series of rapid fire transition questions. One is, how can you, sometimes you're in transition and don't recognize it, right? Sometimes things are changing and everyone sees it but you, or maybe nobody sees it. So what are some of the ways that if people are just feeling unsettled, that they might say, wow, now actually I'm moving from something to something else? What might we look for that?
Yeah, I mean, I think an interesting place to start could be kind of, used the word unsettling. And so then you might ask yourself, what is it that I'm unsettled about?
Mm-hmm.
And that might start revealing something. You might be unsettled about something that you can change. You might be unsettled about something that's out of your control. But I think, that's a place to start.
Mm-hmm. I know one of the things I've noticed in my own experience is when things stop working, whatever that means, and I can't put them back together, then I think, wow, okay, there's an opportunity. Actually, there's an opportunity here. I'm being invited out into something else. Yeah. So what's your experience with that?
I think my honest experience is I think it took a long time for me to feel like it was valid to be unsettled.
Yes. Well, first of all, I just want to compliment you, because here's an interview when you have all the, you can always pat, and the fact that you actually stopped and answered the question like it was the first time you ever heard it. It's really, I mean, that's something if I could put, like I said, I could put gold stars on Zoom.
Thanks. Yeah. I mean, I think being authentic is, a very important part of being a coach, and, it's.
Yeah. But again, it's what we said, why you talking from it, not about it. But go ahead. I interrupted you just to kind of acknowledge the fact that you really took it deep to heart.
Thank you. Yeah, I appreciate that. So I think, basically for me, I was, this is, it's maybe going to sound like bragging at first, like as a student in high school, I was a 4.0 student, right? Like I can, if I have something I need to get done, or if I need to learn to do something, I can do it, right? And so when I joined this job that I didn't love, it was in some ways a new experience for me. And so then coping with these feelings of like, okay, gosh, I'm watching my coworkers and, they're also working, 50 plus hour days. And then they're going and they're reading the industry news and they care about this subject. And I just want to get light years away from it. And so looking back, I feel like that should have been a clue, when I got out of that, then I realized like, oh my gosh, I want to read books about coaching in my off time. Like this was the wrong subject for me. I just didn't care about it.
Well, what you said there was so beautiful, because it took, I think if I got it right.
Yeah.
Because I was admiring the process as much as listening to your content. was that it took a while to be okay with with the validity of your unsettledness, that the unsettledness didn't mean that something was wrong.
Right.
It meant that something was changing.
Yes.
And that is really fascinating, which, and it gets back to all this, so much of I guess psychological, but from my own background, the spiritual literature of just being comfortable and not knowing, being comfortable in the uncertainty.
Yeah.
And I'm sure that's part of what you do is to help or whatever. I don't know what the right, you come up with a verb, okay? Because I don't know what the heck it would be. Whatever the verb is, to help people through the uncertainty of transition.
Definitely. And I think it's such an iterative process. So, I'm just different clients are popping into my mind as you're talking. And it's interesting too. I think, somebody recently, I worked with a woman who came to me after she had gotten laid off from a teaching job. They, kind of an early retirement offer. And she first came to me saying, I'm coming to you because I want another job.
Mm-hmm.
I need another job. I have these restrictions around where I can work and where I can't work, and I feel stuck. And throughout the process of working with her, it was really interesting because the problem that she identified ended up changing over time. And so I think there's something too to just, like I was saying earlier, kind of identifying what is it that's unsettling you, what is the problem, or what do you really even want? And so she ended up in a place where, we went through her detailed finances together, realized what she really needed, realized, she's at retirement age and not wanting to work that much. And so she decided to bring in a roommate instead, and is now, continuing to look for a part-time job. So her goal just shifted as we worked together, and it's been really fun to see her just grow in self-confidence and ease. I think after a big shock like that, where you've been working in one career for a lot of years.
I just want to chime in that I think one of the really cool things about having an external perspective, which is why life coaching, business coaching, career coaching is so beneficial, is just someone else's perspective, someone that can do the lens micro and macro, and kind of come in and come out with us and say, like, you noticed how she presented initially to you, and then what that changed or what that looked like. And I mean, I feel like I'm like trying to plug coaching, but it's just one of those huge benefits of having someone else, like letting someone else into our lives, like being vulnerable enough to say, here's where I'm at. And like, sometimes that's all you have to say. You don't have to maybe say where I want to be or where I think I'm going. You can just present with something and then have these professionals in your life that are like willing to walk with you and like look at that with you and support you in transition. That's really big. And so I just want to like key in on how much an external perspective can really help us when we don't even know what we know. We don't even know what questions to ask, maybe.
Yeah, that is such a good point. A lot of times, when I first start out kind of like with, what brought you here? What, why did you reach out to me? And some people don't have a clear answer, and that's okay too. I think that's exactly right, Stacey. Yeah.
And I want to play off a bit from my own experience, working with people, is that you mentioned it's an iterative process. And there's a way that, I'll just talk about your practice, where you find people, they're transitioning out of something, but they don't know what they're transitioning to. And so my own experience is it's a co-creative it seems like it's a co-creative process between whatever you call them, coach and client or mentor and mentee and whatever. And talk a little bit about that. Because I think people think, I got to figure it all out myself. I should know where I'm going, right? Yeah. Or the other way is saying, you got to tell me what to do. And neither one of those really work out very well. Mm-hmm. So give us some insight into that co-creative process.
Yeah. So, I mean, I think, the process that I like to use a lot is honestly just asking a lot of questions in a similar way, to this interview. It's like you ask a lot of questions and you see where that takes you, right? So sometimes it's asking questions as simply, sometimes it's taking a lot of steps back and going, let's dive back into, if you've had your head down and you've been focused on this one thing and this one area, and now you're getting back, like let's take a step back and explore your values. Why do you even want to work, and what is important to you? And not even at first putting any pressure on what is that going to translate into the next career. It's kind of just like, let's recheck in with who you are first before you get into what you're going to do next. I'm not sure if that answers your question.
Yeah, I think it does, because I think there's a way that who that person is has to inform. See, on the way, it's it's one of the main things that can inform what comes next.
Right. Yeah. So then, sometimes then that'll lead into, okay, let's talk about the skills you actually like to use. You probably get capable of doing a lot of things. So what do you actually like to do? And then maybe, you start putting those two things together, and you start combining it with some interests, and you start talking to some people, and I start generating ideas, you start generating ideas. And then I like, different people use different words, but like kind of finding like a little prototype or a little something you can do to try it on. So maybe it's, I'm interested in this thing. I have a client who owned a bunch of restaurant franchises, and those closed, kind of COVID related closures, and now is exploring. At first, when we talked, was like, I could never go back to school. That's too much time. I'm too far in my career. I just, I need to figure out what's next. And now over time, this person has realized that, maybe their like occupational therapy could be a thing, just like a new spark. Found it by talking with a friend. And so then he's going to talk with, somebody who is running a rehab center and seeing if he likes it, so it's like, you don't have to commit to anything major either. It's like, I think a lot of people want to know, like, oh, this has to be for sure it. And the ability to just say, I'm just going to have a conversation with someone who does this. And if that even feels like, maybe I'm going to learn that I hate it, but you don't know till you actually, I think you getting out of that kind of thinking cycle and into an acting cycle is sometimes what's helpful, to just play a little bit.
Yes.
That was that's the word we were waiting for, because I think there's a way of holding, and I think there's something, I know it's something you do, and something you hold a playful space. You hold a space for playfulness, and I think it kind of gets into the next thing that I was going to get to. So you have people right now who are transitioning, either consciously, unconsciously, either forced march or being gently led into with little rose petals sprinkled out in front of them, however it is they go through a time of transition and upheaval. So let's talk about so I don't know what you call it, self-care, or let's talk about what, if I'm people listening say, okay, I'm in transition, I'm going crazy, I feel the pressure, I feel like I got a gun to my head, right? Let's talk everybody off the ledge and walk them through what, perhaps the best mindset to approach this with, the heart set.
Yeah, I think it's a personal thing, I think, right? So some people, like you said, talking them off the ledge, I'm just thinking through different clients, and I think, different clients kind of need to maybe go through a little bit of a mourning phase. Like I was talking about, that kind of happened for me when I lost my job. It was like, gosh, this is a shock. And I need to let myself feel sad when I'm sad, and be okay with crying if I'm going to cry. And I need to be okay with being angry if I'm angry. And I think allowing myself to do that actually let me move on quicker than if I would have just tried to this horrible thing happened to me and I can't, it's out of my control and so for me, that was what helped me kind of release and be open to something new. So for some people, they need to kind of process that.
If I can just put a point on that too, because it's beautiful. And it's about not denying. It goes back to what you were saying about being okay with the unsettledness.
Right.
It's not denying their experience.
Yes.
So I think that is just so So true, because we think we should be feeling something other than what we're feeling. If we're feeling it, it can't be right. If it can't be right, I can't think straight, blah, 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 blah. So anyway, keep going. That's great.
Yeah, absolutely. So yeah, I think that just leaves more space. And then from there, I think, other things, some people are wired in a way that they can say, okay, I'm going to pretend like, from 9 to 5, I'm focusing on these things and I am looking for a job and I'm having conversations towards this and I'm moving in some way towards this. And then I'm going to have a weekend like I would normally have a weekend. And that's the way that I'm creating, actual just separate time and separate space for separate topics. Some people like talking to me because it's a creating the space for this conversation, right? And then you don't have to think 24/7 about this looming, lurking thing of what's next. So I think there are also ways of just literally creating blocks of time. For other people, that doesn't work that way. But that's where the individual strategies I think are interesting, because different individuals process in different ways.
And I think the processing itself is part of the journey, and that being in transition doesn't mean you're going to get to this final place that everything's going to be perfect, but it's just part of that journey. I continue it even if we're transitioning from like one job to another, or one life to another, nonprofit to business or whatnot. There's no end point in the transition that's going to be just like we've landed. The process continues past that transition, and I think that's why we get so hung up on like that there's going to be a place that we land, and it's like kind of like a deception that there's just this perfect spot that we're going to get to, and we don't get there. And I think realizing that and having that as part of the conversation, at least for me, because I had this major life experience like just a few months ago that rocked my world and changed everything. And just coming out of that, knowing that the journey and the process, it's just always going to be there. And being able to find those people, those conversation partners to help, like, Stacy's been a great person for me to during this process. And, just now I just feel like I'm rambling, but, just that it does. I think the life coaching or the coaching that you give are probably very, very important to people who just feel like there's answers out there. And, during the conversation, you learn it's not about like getting the answers and arriving. It's about just feeling the process and letting it be and bringing it more into the moment versus like, okay, I've got to get here and here and here. Did any of that make sense?
I think it does. And I think, you can tell me if this is kind of where you were going. I think there's this sense sometimes of like, okay, I'm planning for the future in 2 years out. This is going to be like this. And the future is now, right? Like, I think in some ways, maybe that's what you're saying, which is like, you're kind of living the thing that, you're in your future.
Yeah, and there's something, I think it goes back maybe to a more radical form of not knowing, is that there's such a beautiful way to live when you're unmoored. If you can, to the extent you can do it, when you're actually unmoored, when you're actually just moving with things, there's just such a beauty. And in my own experience, there's a certainty to it. There's such an essential certainty to that kind of alignment and that flow where you are, anyway, I'm getting off into, kind of the spiritual text, but I just to go off of what both of you were saying is just the capacity to not discount your present experience because it's not where you think you want to arrive.
And Dave, just to stick with your like spiritual piece of it, we had to do this practice
I don't know if I think I shared it with some of you guys, but we had to do this practice in seminary class the other night where our professor put us, we were all on mute, and he said, I'm gonna ask you some questions, and your only response is, I don't know. And he said, who are you? Where are you from? Who will you see? Who's the next person you're going to see? What will you eat? What will be your next meal? And we just kept saying, I don't know, I don't know, I don't know. And you know, this he's Buddhist, a Christian, Taoist, and his encouragement to us was get real comfortable with, I don't know, because certainty is an illusion. And so we think that we have our 401k or our job or our even, you know, our families, like we think we have these things that are certainties in our lives, our friendships, you know, what our plans are at 2 o'clock this afternoon, and we can't know. And the more that we can feel comfortable with that, the more that we can actually feel safe with that. And maybe more than that too, like maybe just mourning that I don't know what's going to happen. And that some people might need to mourn that as their process. But at the same time, like we're all under an illusion if we think we know where we're going and what we're doing. We can make great plans, and yes, we should. And I'm a planner, but let's not pretend that we know, because we don't.
And Kendra, I'm going to take that. Thank you, Stacy, for that. And that's, I mean, we've been living that the last 3.5 weeks. I mean, we're living that as a company. So it's not like talk about eating your own cooking, right? So part of what you do is you hold the space of certainty that allows other people to then go there. Would that be right? Or something that, in other words, because you're a rock that they can count on, you give them the freedom to feel the uncertainty.
Yeah, I think I would say that's definitely true. And it's also, I think finding a space that you can feel uncertain in is important, right? And in this career space, sometimes it can be really hard to lean on the people that you normally would, because it might freak your partner out if you're freaking out in a way, right? And hopefully you're in a relationship where you can, you know, have that kind of trust. But maybe, you know, there's just something about that's too hard, or, you know, you don't want to go tell your parents or your, you know, whatever. So in some ways I get to be this wonderful third party that is just easily a safe space, because I don't have a stake in, I'm not affected by the outcome of your decisions. I'm just there to help you explore what is right for you. And I think having that space to be uncertain is helpful.
So I'm gonna get real practical now, because we love to bounce back interdimensionally between the unknowing of the infinite and what the hell am I going to do in the next minute.
Sure.
So what are the 3 steps? What are the 3? I'm trying to think of a positive way to say the negative. What are the 3 biggest things to avoid in what are the 3 biggest mistakes you see people make when they're in transition that self-sabotage them or limit their capacity to get through this as quickly and as gracefully as possible?
Yeah.
You can just give me one if 3 is too many.
Sure. Yeah. So I'm kind of just trying to think through some of the biggest ones. So I think sometimes people will feel it's obviously a stressful situation, usually, if, you know, when you're in transition, whatever that transition might mean. And I think it's easy. I would say the biggest mistake that I see people make, if I can call it a mistake, I'm like, is it right to call it a mistake? I'm going to call it a mistake.
For now.
Is to go back to what they know.
Yeah, that's really great.
Our brains, I think, are just wired to stay in the comfort zone. So what I mean by that, a few examples of what that looks like. I had a client who'd come to me. She was a nurse. She had been nursing basically since she was in high school, like nursing her grandparents, and then went to nursing school because her mom told her she should. Should is a big word for me. Stayed in school because it seemed like a stable job. Switched her major, even went back to it after she switched her major because it seemed safe. Lost her husband at one point, was kind of in a transition, then had an opportunity, moved again, took a job in nursing again. So she came to me really wanting to, just break out of that. But it just, her in her life, you just saw her going back and back and back and back. And each time she had what I would call an opportunity, right? Like, some big event would happen in her life. She'd move to a new place, she'd, lose something. And she just kept going back to something that she knew she didn't love, but it was comfortable. And I think our brains are just so wired to do that. And that's where I think like just taking a baby step towards something else can start giving you the confidence that like, oh gosh, I did that and the world didn't collapse or somebody didn't hate me or whatever it is that you're afraid of is going to happen. When you take that step, you kind of show yourself like, oh my gosh, it worked. So I would say, don't go back to what you're comfortable with. And the way to get out of that is to take a baby step.
And that is so great, because if you think about transition, is you're moving from something to something else. So,
Right.
and when you're holding on with your fingernails, and I had just what you said about baby steps is my own experience is that it's like there's a certain amount of, you got to get out of the gravitational pull, and you push, you got to, once you're out, then then the opportunity starts to speak to you. And maybe you could give us a story from your experience for those that say, hey, guess what? If you take the first little step, suddenly things open up.
Yeah, right. Let's see. Let me think of an example with that. I think maybe, so I've talked about some of the clients who have, been in a job for a long time. A client who had never gone to college, was in kind of just some, doing like restaurant retail kind of work, and decided that he wanted to find a career. So again, for him, it was kind of like getting, stopping that work. And then that opened up, I think, through our conversations, we realized what some of his interests were. And he ended up, again, it was kind of through talking to people, ended up in a path where he was into becoming an electrician. So he's in electrician school right now. But I think at the beginning, when we talked, I don't know if he felt he was capable of something that was like in his mind that big of a career, right? Because he had just done these, not menial jobs, but lower minimum wage type jobs. And so I think being okay with saying like, I'm done with that and opening up that space, for him is what helped, I think, make a transition and helped him believe that he was capable of doing that, because he had gone through some school and, failed some math classes and this and that. And so I think it's hard when you've tried something and it seems like it didn't work, but that let him try it again. So
one, I just think, let's make the point, it's so great because it's not like you're working with all kinds of people.
Yeah.
And if people think, oh, I'm not a coach because I'm a blue collar person, or but I think just I love this the variations of your story in terms of the cross sections of people that you work with. So we're getting kind of close to the end, and I know that in my own experience and experience of people that I work with and play with, that the ones that seem to navigate transitions the best are the ones that see opportunity everywhere versus fear everywhere. Mm-hmm. So, and we're wired as we're wired. I mean, you can't take someone who's terrified. My first spiritual teacher grew up in the Depression, and there was no way in the world that he wasn't going to pinch every nickel because he almost starved to death, right? I mean, we are what we are. But how does one, I don't know, what advice can you give to people to help foster the mindset of, oh, I've lost my job. This is the greatest thing that ever happened to me. Or
Right. Yeah. Yeah. That's so foreign to many people.
yeah.
How do you grab that mindset? Again, I think it's like little ways of finding confidence. So that might mean, first, sometimes I'll challenge people to say, a phrase, right, that they may or may not believe is true about themselves. So like something as simple as I am qualified to get a job that pays me enough money. Something as simple as I am valuable.
Mm-hmm.
So sometimes it's like starting to grab something simple and checking in and saying, do I really believe this about myself? And if I don't, why don't I? And then we have conversations about that, and and start releasing some of that. For some people, I've literally walked around pre-COVID. I've literally walked around with someone who had come to my house for a session, and she just had some negative beliefs that she was holding on to. I think about this coworker in the past told me this thing, and even though I don't really believe it's true, I am letting it stick with me. So I would have her like take that phrase, and we like put it in our hand, and we like threw it in the fire pit, right? Like symbolically, just releasing these kind of negative things that she had heard from other people, that she was ready to say, okay, I really want to not believe that anymore.
Mm-hmm. And I think a couple of things, just listening, is one, we've all had experiences where we've been pushed out of the nest and it was the best thing that ever happened to us. I mean, I think there's something about, it's so easy to think of the fear, but then as you look back and see those opportunities, it's actually, life's proven itself in some way if we just have the objectivity and the positivity to look at them. And I think also with you is that you've done it. I mean, the nice thing is, that's again a great thing about talking from and not, hey, look at me. Man.
Yeah. Yeah. And at first, there's like shame to work through, right? Like, oh gosh, I got laid off. That sounds like such a horrible, there must be something wrong with me, even though it's not a firing, it's a, it's a, it feels negative, but I would never trade where I am now to be back there.
Beautiful to be able to say that. I mean, to me, people, the success is, my God, I'm just so glad I am who I am, where I am, when I am. And that is the letting go and state we're all talking about. So, and I want to thank you for modeling that, for being courageous in your own life decisions to get to that point, and then having the heart to share it with others. I think that makes you you are a great gift. And so if people want to find you, work with you, how do we do that?
Yeah, so I have a website, kendraneipp.com, KendraNeipp. And I'm also on LinkedIn. That's another easy way to find me.
And we'll post that as well. And then tomorrow, Kendra will be our featured guest at our Commonwealth group. And Stacy, if people want to know more about the Commonwealth group, what do they do?
So the Commonwealth group is awesome. We meet every Thursday at noon Eastern time, and we have a really great speaker. Usually it's our Wednesday speaker that speaks a little bit with us. We ask really probing questions that you could or could not answer. You have autonomy. But we ask really deep, good questions, and we go there with you, and we challenge. We set goals, we set accountability each week for the things that we did last week and what we want to do next week. It's also like a low pressure thing. If you don't want to be super involved and you don't want to talk and you just want to come and like network, you can. But it's just a great group of people. We have anywhere from 5 to 25 people joining us every Thursday. You can email me or anybody in the group. You can post below. You can direct message us. at Heart Powered Ventures, we're changing up our Facebook. So our name has changed. Our pictures are going to be different. Stick with us as we transition, and stick with us in that. So Thursdays, if you want to join, I'm happy to give out a guest pass. And I think Kendra, you have some friends maybe or some colleagues if you want to welcome them tomorrow. We have like some guest passes that you're handing out, and we welcome new people. We are a monthly subscription or a yearly subscription. You can join us at different price points. We'd love to have you do that for the month, and that's a better, deeper conversation that I can have with anyone who's interested. Send me a message. We can talk about all the benefits of being part of the Commonwealth on a monthly or yearly basis. But for tomorrow, if you get a guest pass, let me know. You can join us at noon for an hour Eastern time.
And we'll post that information on the Facebook site too as well. So Kendra, thanks a lot. Stick on after we go off here because I like to talk just a minute about tomorrow. But I can tell you once again, you are one of these times Stacy's going to tell me someone's great and they're going to come on and lay an egg, and then I'm going to that'll be the last person she can get on. So, but she gets to live another week because you are as advertised. And thank you again for who you are and what you're doing, what you're bringing to the world, and for bringing it to us.
Thank you so much. It's been a pleasure.
And Rinny, as always, thank you for making the trains run on time and pulling this all together and keeping a cool head when Facebook wasn't. So thanks to you as well.